J.J. Abrams was once the hottest director in Hollywood. With multiple hit TV shows and major franchises under his control, he and his production company Bad Robot were seemingly in charge of, well, everything. So how did Abrams and Bad Robot go from the toast of Hollywood to leaving Hollywood completely? Let's trace the rise and fall of Bad Robot. J.J. Abrams was born into the entertainment industry. His father, Gerald Abrams, was a successful TV executive turned producer, and his mother, Carol Abrams, was a realtor, professor, and also produced movies for television. Before he was an A-list director, Abrams dabbled in a few different entertainment industry jobs, including composing music and working as an early computer animator. In the late 90s, he and a team of animators called the Propeller Heads collaborated to produce test footage for the first Shrek movie, which wasn't used. But Abrams' real road to success began as a writer. His first film as a credited screenwriter, 1990's Jim Belushi comedy Taking Care of Business, was followed by his breakout film, 1991's Regarding Henry, directed by Mike Nichols and starring Harrison Ford and Annette Bening. He then wrote the Mel Gibson film Forever Young, co-wrote the Joe Pesci-Danny Glover comedy Gone Fishin', and is one of 5 credited writers, among many other uncredited writers, on Michael Bay's Armageddon. Fun fact, another credited writer with the story on Armageddon was Tony Gilroy, which means that the two creatives who launched arguably the most successful projects of the new Star Wars era also co-wrote the movie that gave us the Ben Affleck, Liv Tyler animal crackers scene. But Abrams' real breakout came on the small screen. In 1998, Abrams and Matt Reeves created the TV show Felicity, which aired on the still new network, the WB, alongside shows like Charmed, Dawson's Creek, and its lead-in, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Felicity was a breakout hit and made a star out of Kerry Russell while putting Abrams on the TV radar. In May of 1999, following Felicity's first season, Abrams founded his production company, Bad Robot, as part of an overall deal with ABC and their television division. The deal was for 4 years and an estimated $16 million, and Abrams immediately got to work making shows for one of America's biggest broadcast networks. Abrams delivered right out of the gate with 2 hit series. The first was Alias, starring Jennifer Garner as a double agent working for the CIA, which debuted in the fall of 2001 and ran for 5 seasons, launching Garner into stardom as well. But it was Bad Robot's second TV show for ABC that really put the company on the map, Lost.
Where are we?
Lost debuted in the fall of 2004 while the networks were still in the middle of the initial reality TV craze. Its big budget, huge cast, and sprawling storytelling were unlike anything else on network TV, and audiences took notice. The first part of the 2-hour pilot drew over 18 million viewers, and the show proved effective at capturing what was still a somewhat new phenomenon in Hollywood: internet buzz. Lost not only put many of its ensemble of actors on the Hollywood A-list, it also ignited online forums, with countless internet sleuths tuning in each week, then comparing notes on the internet, trying to solve the show's mysteries. And the idea of packing a show with mysteries is key to what launched J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot to success. If you remember the rise of J.J. Abrams, I'm sure you also remember the rise of the mystery box. The mystery box was a storytelling method that Abrams often talked about, which entailed packing a movie or show with questions that the audience wants the answer to in order to get them engaged with the story and the characters. Abrams himself explained the concept and its appeal in a 2007 TED Talk, recorded at the height of Lost's success.
So I started thinking about Lost and the stuff that we do, and I realized, oh my God, like mystery boxes are everywhere in what I do. What are stories but mystery boxes? There's a fundamental question. In TV, the first act is called the teaser. It's literally the teaser. It's the big question. So you're drawn into it. Then, of course, there's another question, and it goes on and on and on. I mean, look at like Star Wars. You got the droids. They meet the mysterious woman. Who's that? We don't know. Mystery box, you know. Then there's a thing of like mystery in terms of imagination. The withholding of information, you know, doing that intentionally.
For its first 3 seasons, Lost built an audience largely on the promise of finding out what exactly was going on this increasingly insane island. However, unlike J.J. Abrams' actual mystery box of magic, Lost's mystery box eventually had to be opened. And as the seasons wore on, the castaways weren't the only ones feeling lost. Many fans started feeling impatient, first out of frustration at how long the show was taking to answer their questions, and then out of dissatisfaction with some of the answers, as well as the questions set up by the show that just went completely unanswered.
If you are watching the show for the answers to your mysteries, you're not going to like the ending.
Ratings for Lost's final season were a little more than half what they were in season 1, and 5 million fewer people tuned into the finale than saw the premiere. Part of that's likely due to the birth of watching TV on digital platforms like iTunes, but the end of Lost wasn't able to capture the zeitgeist in the same way as the beginning of Lost. However, the show still remained generally popular, if divisive, throughout its 6-season run, and was a big moneymaker for ABC. It also established Abrams and Bad Robot as a major force in Hollywood. Bad Robot continued producing multi-season shows like Fringe and Person of Interest throughout the 2000s and into the 2010s, and Fringe in particular, which Abrams co-created with Alex Kurtzman and Roberto Orci, captured an energetic fan base, though it also suffered the same viewer erosion as Lost over its 5 seasons. But the success of Lost made Abrams and his team of collaborators like Kurtzman, Orci, Damon Lindelof, and Drew Goddard the hottest names in Hollywood. In 2006, the year that Bad Robot's contract with ABC expired, Abrams directed his first feature film, Mission Impossible 3. And while the movie wasn't a massive box office hit, it was well received by critics and audiences and proved that Abrams had what it takes to sit in the director's chair. That year, Bad Robot signed a new deal to produce projects with Mission Impossible studio Paramount, along with a TV development deal at Warner Brothers, and the company began turning its efforts to producing movies as well as TV. The mystery box concept was front and center in Bad Robot's first big movie hit, Cloverfield, which was produced by Abrams and Bad Robot, written by Drew Goddard, and directed by Matt Reeves. Cloverfield was released in early 2008 under a cloud of mystery. Nobody really knew what it was about, other than that it was a found footage film about something wreaking havoc in New York City. Speculation about the film ranged from it being a new Godzilla movie to an adaptation of the animated series Voltron. It turned out that the creature was an alien with, of course, mysterious origins, and audiences ate the movie up, with the worldwide box office coming in at nearly $175 million off of a reported $25 million budget. Bad Robot also co-produced Abrams' second film as a director, the 2009 reboot of Star Trek, which was another box office hit that revived the aging franchise and cemented Abrams' signature directorial style, the often parodied use of lens flares. Next, Abrams used his love of Steven Spielberg and the mystery box concept to drive his third film, 2011's Super 8, to box office success, bringing in $250 million worldwide off a $50 million budget. The Mission Impossible franchise also saw a resurgence, building off the positive reception to Mission Impossible 3. Bad Robot co-produced 3 more well-received and successful mission films, starting with 2011's Ghost Protocol and ending with 2018's Mission Impossible Fallout. Things were already going well, but in early 2013, Abrams and Bad Robot hit a career and company peak. With Disney buying the rights to the Star Wars franchise from George Lucas in 2012, the studio announced plans to make a new sequel trilogy picking up after 1983's Return of the Jedi, and Abrams was named the first movie's director, which he would also co-produce and co-write. Bad Robot and Lucasfilm were now creative partners, and for Abrams, a lifelong Star Wars fan, it must have seemed like things couldn't get any better. And as it turns out, they really didn't. 2013 was also the year that cracks first started to appear in the Bad Robot facade. Abrams' follow-up to 2009's Star Trek, summer 2013, Star Trek Into Darkness, was a modest box office success, but disappointed many Trek fans with a botched reboot of the franchise's Khan storyline. Employing the mystery box strategy, Abrams tried to hide that Khan Noonien Singh would be the villain of the film, officially naming the character John Harrison in all promotional materials, and refusing to divulge Khan's presence in the film pre-release. But Trek fans sniffed the mystery out pretty early, especially when word leaked that Benicio del Toro was being sought to play the, quote, mystery villain in the next Star Trek film, a part that eventually went to Benedict Cumberbatch. And what was meant to be the movie's big reveal ended up being underwhelming to a lot of the fans, myself included.
My name is Khan.
The mystery box approach had, for the biggest time so far, backfired.
It ended up, I think, coming off like we were being coy, or we were trying to act like we were more clever than we are or something. And all it really was just an attempt to not ruin the thing.
But everyone knew that Abrams was really a Star Wars fan at heart. In 2015, Star Wars The Force Awakens delivered a film that made fans as happy as you can make a fandom as diverse and picky as Star Wars fans can usually be. With the return of beloved characters like Luke, Leia, and Han Solo, and the introduction of new characters like Rey, Finn, Poe, and Kylo Ren, The Force Awakens ushered in a new era of Star Wars. And as you would expect, the movie was also littered with unopened mystery boxes. Who were Rey's parents? How did Maz Kanata end up with Luke's lightsaber? Why has Luke Skywalker been in hiding? Can Ben Solo be turned from the dark side? And who is Snoke anyway? The Force Awakens ended with Rey and Luke Skywalker face to face, leaving fans on the edge of their seats to find out what would happen next. And the movie was a box office phenomenon, grossing over $900 million in the US and Canada, setting a record for the biggest opening ever at the time, and still holding the record for the highest domestic box office gross of all time. But Abrams and Bad Robot weren't attached to the next Star Wars film, due to the short 2-year time span between episodes, a scheduling decision by Disney that would have major consequences for both companies.
Ryan, do you have anything for the fans?
Of course there's a trailer! What are you talking about? Of course! Yeah!
Before we move on, I want to take a moment to thank the sponsor for this video, Mando. Spring is in the air, and in Arkansas, that means that the humidity is rising along with the temperatures. We get about a month of nice spring weather before it starts getting sticky, which means that we are making the transition from sweater weather to sweating weather. Luckily, I'm fully stocked up with Mando year-round to keep me smelling fresh. Mando is a whole-body deodorant that's proven to block odor all day and control odor for up to 72 hours. I'm an everyday user of the whole suite of Mando products: body wash, spray deodorant, stick deodorant, wipes. You've been hearing me talk about it on the channel for so long because it works. We had a kids versus coaches soccer game the other night, and I'm not going to lie to you, I was drenched in sweat by the end of it. The only problem was I also had a movie to go to right after it. But with Mando, I didn't worry about it. I didn't worry about stinking up the theater, and that's because I trust Mando to do its job. All Mando products are baking soda free and paraben free, and it's clinically proven to control odor better than Old Spice. So what are you waiting for? Some men mask their BO with sense. Mando men get the job done right. Don't mask it, Mando it. Available in retailers near you, or head to shopmando.com, because for a limited time, new customers get 20% off site-wide with my exclusive code. Use code DAN at shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide. That's shopmando.com. Please support the show and tell them that I sent you. Mando's got you covered with deodorant plus sweat control. Say goodbye to sweat stains and hello to long-lasting freshness. Following the release of The Force Awakens, Bad Robot put up a mixed record at the box office. 2016's 10 Cloverfield Lane, directed by Dan Trachtenberg, was well received and turned a tidy profit off its low $15 million budget, though it wasn't really a sequel to the original Cloverfield. It was a low-budget film that was converted mid-production into a blood relative of the first film, as producer Abrams described it. Another Cloverfield film, 2018's The Cloverfield Paradox, was also converted mid-production by Abrams into a Cloverfield movie, but it was not very well received. Ultimately, Bad Robot and Paramount decided to sell the movie to Netflix, where it became a surprise release on Super Bowl Sunday. Despite the first Cloverfield movie's Easter eggs and promise of a potentially deep backstory for the aliens, no other Cloverfield films have been released since 2018, with a fourth entry announced years ago, but with no firm production or release plans set. Bad Robot's first movie franchise had stalled out. Later in 2016, the third new Star Trek film, Star Trek Beyond, which Abrams did not return to direct due to his Star Wars commitments, failed to thrill fans and brought in less than $350 million globally off a reported $185 million production budget. And the franchise would move on to headline the streaming era at Paramount Plus under the leadership of Alex Kurtzman, generating multiple series that received a mixed at best reception from fans. Despite multiple attempts to get a fourth movie off the ground, Bad Robot's time in the Star Trek film franchise was over. With Bad Robot's other franchises waning, a Star Wars movie would have been pretty welcome, and that opportunity unexpectedly arose in 2017. Given the short window between the release dates of Star Wars The Force Awakens and its eventual sequel, The Last Jedi, Lucasfilm needed a creative team for the sequel that was already in production mode and ready to start writing and pre-production as soon as The Force Awakens was released, which precluded Abrams and Bad Robot from doing both films. In August of 2014, over a year before The Force Awakens hit theaters, Rian Johnson was announced as the director and writer of The Last Jedi. And while Abrams' approach of packing The Force Awakens with mystery boxes had enticed audiences, Johnson's philosophy regarding the sequel was, let's say, different. I don't think I need to go too much into the reaction around The Last Jedi. We are approaching the 10th anniversary of Last Jedi discourse here on the internet. But Johnson did not set out to solve the mysteries Abrams set up in The Force Awakens, at least not in the traditional sense. Instead, he took an iconoclastic approach, making The Last Jedi a film about challenging perceptions and not delivering answers, because those answers would just feed into a meaningless cycle, a system that had to be broken down in order to be rebuilt. The heroes of the past and the villains of the future were not who you thought they were. Maybe they weren't really important at all. It was a bold approach to take, and The Last Jedi certainly had and has its fans who are refreshed by this new direction for the franchise, but it also had and has its detractors, and they were and continue to be very vocal.
You're still holding on! Let go!
While a box office drop-off between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi was to be expected, the second film in the new trilogy brought in around $300 million less domestically and around $700 million less worldwide than its predecessor. However, regardless of box office results, Johnson was never attached to direct the next film. His successor had already been named. In August of 2015, 4 months before The Force Awakens opened and more than 2 years before The Last Jedi's premiere, Jurassic World director Colin Trevorrow was announced as the director and co-writer of the third sequel trilogy film. But over 2 years later, in September 2017, Trevorrow left the film, reportedly after months of creative friction with Lucasfilm about his script. Disney needed a successor to Rian Johnson's successor, and a week later it was announced that J.J. Abrams would return to direct Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, with Bad Robot back as co-producer, finishing the trilogy that he had helped launch. However, despite his return as director, producer, and co-writer, much of what Abrams had set up in Episode 7 had been undone in Episode 8, which debuted 3 months after J.J. Abrams was hired to direct the final film. So, what would Abrams do?
Roll it again.
Despite Disney pushing Episode 9's release from May to December 2019, Abrams still had less than 2 years to get his movie rewritten, shot, edited, and released. Along with writer Chris Terrio, Abrams set out to both rewrite the original script for Episode 9 and decide how to move forward from The Last Jedi with Abrams back in control. Faced with the choice between staying the course set by Johnson or paying off what he'd set up in The Force Awakens, J.J. Abrams opted to go for safer territory.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
The Rise of Skywalker brought back legacy characters like Emperor Palpatine and Lando Calrissian, while sidelining newer characters like John Boyega's Finn and Kelly Marie Tran's Rose Tico. If The Last Jedi represented dismantling the past to build a new future, The Rise of Skywalker represented rebuilding the past using whatever parts were still available. While Abrams' play the hits approach may have seemed like the safer option, it didn't pay off. Unlike the previous 2 sequel films, The Rise of Skywalker was not loved by critics, and most fans, whether they loved or hated The Last Jedi, didn't care much for it either. The sequel trilogy's box office decline continued, and The Rise of Skywalker made $105 million less than The Last Jedi domestically, and around $300 million less worldwide, barely cracking the $1 billion global mark. While far from a box office flop, it also fell short of what many expected from the grand finale of 9 episodes and over 40 years of storytelling. A hit trilogy ender and a thriving franchise may have kept J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot in the Star Wars business for quite a while, at least as producers, but The Rise of Skywalker's disappointing performance put an end to the Bad Robot era in a galaxy far, far away. No follow-up episodes have been made, and new films featuring the trilogy's characters like Rey have been announced, but have yet to pan out. And just like that, another one of the company's movie franchises was gone.
No one's ever really gone.
As 2019 came to a close, things looked dire for Bad Robot. Abrams' deal with Paramount Pictures was over, Star Wars was over, and on the TV side, Bad Robot had failed to produce a show that could recapture the appeal of Lost or even Fringe. The closest the company was able to get was HBO's Westworld, which Abrams executive produced. But after 2 successful seasons, the show slowly faded away across 2 more, with many fans frustrated by the series' dense storytelling and confusing mysteries. Sound familiar? The mystery box had claimed another victim. 2019 could have been the end for Abrams' company, but Bad Robot received a lifeline shortly before The Rise of Skywalker's release with the announcement of a $250 million 5-year development deal at Warner Media, then owned by AT&T. This deal covered the development of projects including movies, TV shows, and video games, and with Bad Robot's previous franchises at Disney and Paramount declining or gone, it seemed like a fresh start for Bad Robot with a new infusion of cash and seemingly limitless potential. And then, nothing happened. Well, not nothing, but close to it. The 5-year Warner deal resulted in no movies being made for the studio and just 2 new television shows. The first was Duster, starring Lost alumnus Josh Holloway, which debuted on HBO Max in May of last year and was canceled after 1 season. 2 other shows that were announced in 2020 alongside Duster never happened: a Shining spin-off series called Overlook and a series set in the Justice League Dark universe. The other show born out of Bad Robot's 5-year Warner Brothers deal was Batman Caped Crusader, a film noir take on The Dark Knight from Bruce Timm, co-creator of the hit 90s show Batman the Animated Series. The project was announced in May of 2021, but Warner Brothers Discovery, as it was known by then, decided not to continue with the project and sold it to Amazon in 2023. Abrams also had a big-budget sci-fi series deep in development called Demimonde, starring Danielle Deadwyler, which would have been his first TV show as a sole creator since Alias. But while his massive development deal had been made with Warner Media, then owned by AT&T, it was largely overseen by David Zaslav's Warner Brothers Discovery after AT&T's exit in 2022. And as part of Zaslav's infamous cost-cutting measures, the company killed the show and its reported $200+ million budget shortly after Zaslav took over, with Warner Brothers Discovery also reportedly re-evaluating its overall deal with Bad Robot. In December 2024, Bad Robot renewed its Warner Brothers deal, but on much different terms. The revised agreement was reported to be a 2-year first look deal, meaning Warner Brothers had the option to greenlight or reject a Bad Robot project before anyone else, but the deal was also non-exclusive and for much less money. And with no TV shows in production or firmly on the horizon, Warner Brothers going through yet another acquisition and only 2 feature films on its current slate for 2026, the news last week that Bad Robot had decided to downsize came as no surprise. To begin with, we had the sale last year of Bad Robot's office space in Santa Monica, which was described by one online outlet in 2019 as the coolest office in Hollywood ever, for a reported $31 million. True to form, the former Bad Robot office had a sign on the outside of the building that read not Bad Robot, but the National Typewriter Company. Even J.J. Abrams' office was a mystery box. And then came last week's news that Abrams will close Bad Robot's remaining LA offices and move to New York. While Bad Robot remains in business, it is an obvious drop in scale and influence. What one unnamed source told The Hollywood Reporter was, quote, the end of an era. So what happened to Bad Robot? How could a company that at one time was producing Star Wars, Star Trek, Mission Impossible, Cloverfield, Alias, Fringe, and Lost fall this far? Well, I think that part of the company's trouble was J.J. Abrams' mystery box approach to almost everything. Setting up a mystery is exciting, full of intrigue. You get people sitting forward and waiting to see what comes next. But what comes next has to be satisfying, and a hallmark of Bad Robot and Abrams projects is that they often intrigue audiences with a mystery box and then alienate them when that box is opened, if it's ever opened. Sometimes that disappointment is due to poor planning or bad writing or studio interference. Sometimes it's just that the mystery is so intriguing that no answer would be satisfying, but the result is the same. The mystery box approach makes it easy to draw in fans, but it usually doesn't yield long-lasting franchises, which resulted in many of Bad Robot's projects and franchises being short-lived. Another reason for Bad Robot's decline may be that J.J. Abrams has a knack for attaching himself to things that, for one reason or another, never get made. Since launching Bad Robot in 1999, J.J. Abrams has been attached to produce and or direct dozens of projects, including, and this is not a complete list, Superman Flyby, which eventually became Superman Returns, a film adaptation of The Dark Tower before the Matthew McConaughey one, a Micronauts movie, a Samurai Jack movie, an Edgar Wright sci-fi film called Collider, a movie adaptation of the video games Portal and or Half-Life, a Thomas Edison biopic, Killers of the Flower Moon before Scorsese made it, a fourth Star Trek film, a Constantine TV series, a horror anthology series with Stephen King, another Superman film potentially starring Michael B. Jordan, a Zatanna movie, a biography series about U2, and a Hot Wheels movie. And that's just a selection of higher profile projects among many others. Now, obviously, projects fall through all the time in Hollywood, but if even 25% of these projects had actually happened, Abrams and Bad Robot could still be going strong. But that's not how things turned out, either because of bad luck, typical Hollywood chaos, creative issues, or some combination of the above. Of course, it's not like Abrams can't find work. Bad Robot is producing Warner Brothers' The End of Oak Street, directed and written by David Robert Mitchell, who also made It Follows. Its August release date and intriguing premise could capitalize on the same summer magic that made Weapons a hit last year, and Abrams is slated to release his first film as director since The Rise of Skywalker in November, also with Warner Brothers. It's called The Great Beyond, a supernatural fantasy starring Glenn Powell, Jenna Ortega, and Samuel L. Jackson. But you can't argue that Bad Robot is far from its peak after an impressive industry-defining rise, followed by gradual erosion. Audience fatigue, corporate mergers, and creative difficulties all had a part to play in the company's fall, but it would be foolish not to take some lessons from it. The story of Bad Robot should serve as a warning to everyone in the entertainment industry, especially at a time when studios are getting bigger, more in debt, and more reliant on established IP to stay afloat. It doesn't matter if you're producing the biggest franchises on earth, making historically successful, crowd-pleasing movies and buzzy award-winning TV shows. On a long enough timeline in Hollywood, no one is too big to fail. And figuring out how to stay on top may be the biggest mystery box of them all.
Look inside yourself and figure out what is inside you, because ultimately, the mystery box is all of us. So there's that.
If you liked this video, I also cover a bunch of other stuff about movies in the entertainment industry. And if you want to see another rise and fall story, check out my recent video about the Alamo Drafthouse right here. Thanks for watching.